that's Cassingles.
I took an interest in music at a very early age as a fan because I had an older brother and an older sister, and especially my older brother who was, about 4 or 5 years older than me. That was perfect. It was right early 60s. Like I remember all the Beatles singles coming into our house and all that stuff. And then later on, all that great late 60s and early 70s music through him. So, at that point, I guess I was 5 years old. It's 1964. So I can remember the Capitol label logos going around on the portable record players. So, music was beginning to become important.
Yeah, that's Cassingles.
So our next guest has played in like a family band for the last 40 plus years. Can you imagine a world where you and your brother and let's say your cousins all play in the same band together for
This is my dream.
time?
This is my literal dream. I want to be in a family band so bad. Since I was a little tiny girl and we would go over to, I think it was I'm not really sure what family, some family's house, and somebody's family. Maybe it was their family, maybe another family. I don't really remember, but somebody with a lot of people in their family. There was like a lot of people in their family, and they all played an instrument and like incredibly well and sang. And it was like magic. And I was like, oh my God, how do I do this? And then I saw The Sound of Music and I was like, oh, I am totally, is it Vin Traps?
Yes.
Vin Traps memory.
If we're wrong, because singles audience, please correct us.
I'm sure somebody will. And I welcome it because I literally can't remember anything. But anyway, I was like, clearly I should be Maria. I mean, minus the whole nun thing and like, trauma and war and everything that went with it, other than the singing.
Right.
I was like, singing in family band, that's the part I like. Everything else I can leave. I'm very selective in the parts I identify with. But that part I was like, yes, I'm in. The idea of like, I like the idea of making music, period. And my dad played guitar. I loved singing along. Anytime like somebody was like, let's sing Christmas carols, I was like, yes, let's sing all of them, even the ones I don't really like that much and have 900 verses, but I will sing every one of them. And my mom was the one who started like Christmas carols in the car well before Thanksgiving. And we pretended to hate it, but really I was like, okay, let's do this. Sing it along.
Nice. Well, I think that our next guest, Michael Timmins of Cowboy Junkies, is going to be able to tell us all about the world of a family band.
I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh. So guys, here we are. We're going to welcome
Michael Timmins, and we are so excited to have him. I'm Courtney Dawn.
And I'm Chris Margolin.
And this is Cassingles. It's going to be a wild ride.
Enjoy it, guys.
Welcome.
Yeah, that's Cassingles.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi.
Our dogs heard you as well. They say hello.
Okay.
We always, it seems to be every interview we have starts off with our dogs doing something.
Okay.
When we started, we had a smaller like table set up. In the first few episodes, they just ran headlong into it. And he's 120 pounds, so when he runs,
I was gonna say when you started, you had a smaller dog. So.
we've got two. One that thinks he's a bigger one. There we go.
Good boy.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Cassingles. I'm Chris Margolin.
And I'm Courtney Dawn.
And we are grateful to have you on here. Thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. Hey Noodle, you're gonna be just fine.
Hey Noodle. You're good, buddy. Everybody's here.
We hear you too.
Welcome to our disaster.
So we always like to start off a little differently. We always figure, we know our guests via the public spotlight that they've been in for their careers, but we don't know the foundation. So we like to go all the way back. So who was Mike Timmins as a little kid? Who was the 5-year-old or 6-year-old just starting off in the school days version?
Well, in Montreal, first of all, that's kind of important, I guess. And it was important because hockey was my passion. That was my world, playing hockey. So that was about it. Hockey all the time.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Were there any other interests or things that your parents or family tried to steer you towards, or were you a hockey family all the way?
My parents were very hands off. There were six kids in all, so they had their hands full, and they were very hands off in where they steered us. If we showed an interest in something, they were very good at opening up whatever avenues there were to get to that point. But I think that young, I'm trying to think. Oh, I was beginning to take an interest in music. I took an interest in music at a very early age as a fan because I had an older brother and an older sister, and especially my older brother who was about 4 or 5 years older than me. That was perfect. It was right early 60s. Like I remember all the Beatles singles coming into our house and all that stuff. And then later on, all that great late 70s, late 60s and early 70s music through him. So, at that point, I guess I was 5 years old. It's 1964. So I can remember the Capitol label logos going around on the portable record players. So, music was beginning to become important.
Did you have warring musical tastes with six kids? Like, did you
You
have the
know,
like,
Not really, I think if you looked at our record collections back then, there would have been my older brother's, you know, uh, I say Beatles singles, and as well there would have been, some Burl Ives and some, yeah, of that era, those types of
All
records in
right.
there as well for the younger kids. There's that transitional period, but I sort of kind of talk when I talk about the Cowboy Junkies with the three siblings in there. I think part of the reason why we have a very why we'd be able to stick together musically, and why we have a very kind of distinctive sound is we shared a record collection and growing up, and therefore we have very similar musical tastes. There's a few divergent things here and there, but generally speaking, what we love, we kind of all love. That sort of core sound, and that comes from that era, 60s and early 70s.
Now, given that you guys were a family band,
Yeah.
uh, were your parents ever, what did your parents think when you guys were like, no, we're going to do this for our career? Was there ever a hesitation from them? Were they super
Yeah.
supportive of that? Or how did they feel?
Well, I sort of started off right before the Cowboy Junkies were formed. I went off and decided I was going to do music, and I think that was very not, as a parent as a parent now, I know it was very troubling for them. But they certainly weren't they weren't they didn't try to put up any barriers in the way, right? It was very much, and to do so, I moved to New York, then I moved to London, so I kind of left the family bubble, so to speak, because I knew it'd be kind of weird in there. Um, but they were very supportive in the sense that they kind of said, look, you do what you got to do, and good luck. you know which was which is about as much as you could ask for at that point, I think.
that's so nice that they were so supportive. What were they
Yeah.
listening to when you were young?
My dad was a big music fan, so again, that's part of our attachment to music. Like when he would come home, going back to the 5-year-old Mike, when he would come home from work, he had a reel to reel quarter-inch tape player, and he was a big band jazz fan, and he would often for about half an hour just blast. He was a big Dixieland jazz fan too, so he'd blast that music throughout the house, and that was sort of there was permission at that point for the kids just to go crazy, just to bounce around the house and dance and and um, and I think that was his way of getting sort of his day done as well. And so I think that's a part of it, that sort of we connected at a very early age, that excitement, the excitement that music could bring and what it could bring out in people, and from a very physical and emotional point of view. So that's what he would listen to. He kind of stopped listening to music pretty uh, early on. I mean, he didn't completely stop, but that ritual kind of ended. I don't know when, and then he would listen to he listened to jazz his whole life. So he's a big Ella Fitzgerald fan, and Sarah Vaughan, and Duke Ellington fan. So he's a jazz fan. My mom kind of listened to. She again wasn't really a music listening fan. She was more trying to keep up with the kids, trying to find out what they were listening to. And my first record was bought by my mother, was our Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young, Our House. So I remember coming home from school and that sitting on my pillow, and my first concert actually she took me to was Johnny Cash and the Carter Family, and
Um,
so they recognized in their kids this love of music, so they were there for it, they were a part of it.
Was there a time, when were you, how old were you when you decided that music was going to be that career choice, and how kind of did you act as a student once you had figured that out?
Um, so when I was around 19, 18, 19, I sort of with again for the fourth member, there's three siblings, and then there's Alan who's in the band, and he's a he's been a friend. As I said, I've known him longer than I've known my brother Peter because I was a friend before Peter was born. Um, and we were huge. We connected through music as well. That was the way we connected. And growing up, we grew up in the same town in Montreal, and we shared a record collection as well. Like the newest David Bowie came out, and we decided who would buy it and who would tape it. We were part of destroying the industry. And so around I guess around 18, 19, we formed a band, and we moved to New York, and then we moved to London, and we kind of were on that path. And I think probably when I was around, after about 2 or 3 years of doing that and really not having much success as far as commercially goes or making money at it, I kind of decided this is what I wanted to do. Like I kind of committed. I said, well, I kind of realized that I remember the sort of making the choice, thinking, I might not make a living at this, and I'll probably have to do other jobs, but this is what I want to do with my life. So it was very early on, probably my early 20s, before Cowboy Junkies was formed, for sure.
And then at what point then do you decide to bring in your siblings?
So
Or was it your choice to bring in your siblings?
yeah, it was sort of a combination. So Al and I formed a band called Hunger Project in Toronto in the late 70s, and then we moved to New York with that, and then we're there for about a year, and then moved to London, England for about 3 years. That band broke up there, but we stayed together, and we formed another band called Germinal, which was sort of a pure instrumental experimental band. And then we came back to Toronto around 84, 85, I guess. And I came back first, and he followed, and kind of stared at each other and said, "Okay, let's go again. What are we going to do this time?" And that's when and at that point I was really getting into blues music, and so we decided that we were going to sort of form sort of a rootsy kind of thing, very loosely based on blues music. And we rented a house in downtown Toronto and converted the garage to a rehearsal space, and we were kind of working together, the two of us, just working on ideas. And at that point, we had my older brother was in town, and he kind of joined us. He was a guitar player, and he joined us for a while. And then one day, my younger brother, Peter, who's in the band, literally walked into the rehearsal space with a little drum kit and set it up. And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I want to play drums." He says, "Okay, just keep time with your right cymbal." And that's really all I did. If you listen to it, like White's Off Earth Now, that's our first record. That's pretty much what he's doing. He's just keeping time on the ride, and he was very good at it. And so that went from there. And then when we sort of began to develop a sound between me, Alan, my brother John, and my brother Pete, and we just realized we needed a singer, or we had these ideas for a singer. And Margot was in town, and she was just graduating from school with a social work degree, and we knew she could sing because growing up again back in Montreal, she was always the star of the school play. Like when they needed a singer for the end of year play, she was the one, and she would floor people. Like she, as a little kid, this would get up there and people would just be astonished. So we invited her in, and it worked, and we just continued on.
What were some of the initial challenges that you guys faced in working together with your siblings?
I don't know if there was much, I mean,
or maybe a better question is, what did you learn on the way as you guys were starting to form a band together?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to challenges, I think, I was very, very committed. As I say, I already made up my mind, this is what I was doing. Margot was not sure she was doing, she enjoyed doing it. She had nothing else right then to do, and it was kind of fun hanging out with her brothers. So, I guess there was that, her sort of beginning to realize the sacrifices one had to make as far as if you're going to be in a band, the amount of time you had to put into rehearsal, and the late nights, and then we even started to tour very early, getting in a van and traveling to town, and we didn't have the money to stay at a hotel, so he'd stayed at somebody's house. And there's a lot of stuff that she did. I don't think she'd envisioned her life like this. He was totally cool with it. He was younger and having that time of his life. So there was that. There was sort of the forming of the band and the forming of the ethic, the work ethic, right, and the commitment, and so that I guess there was challenges there, but people bought into it pretty quickly, and then we kind of, in many ways, like our roles in the family, as I said, there's 6 of us, and my older brother John, who was in the band very early on, kind of dropped out very early. He realized he didn't want to commit to that work ethic, that the band work ethic. He didn't like the traveling. He just just be married. He had a young kid. It wasn't sort of up. Wasn't something that he realized he could do. So between the 4 of us, between the 3 siblings, there was my older brother John, sister Sue, me, and then Margot, and then another sister, and then Pete, who's the youngest. So for whatever reason, me and Margot had always been very close, and Pete was the youngest brother. So we kind of fit into a slot, where it's same sort of dynamic the way we had in the family kind of moved over to the band. And I think we sort of realized pretty early on that it kind of worked, and everybody felt comfortable like that. Everybody could bring what they had to bring, and everybody had to bring something special to the band. But as far as power dynamic might be too big a word, but that kind of settled in pretty early on, and it went from there. And I think we realized that that's how this is going to work. We have to continue to communicate and talk and work out things, but there was a structure to how we do things, and that kind of worked, I think. Democracies are not a good place for the band. They don't really work. You have to have somebody driving the bus. Somebody's got to be up front, and you have to be a lot of people behind helping out and giving directions, keeping the driver awake. But you can't have 4 sets of hands on the wheel. That doesn't really work.
Yeah. Well, was there ever a time where there was arguing over songwriting? So you kind of always just took the wheel as kind of, this is, I guess, how did that dynamic work for songwriting?
Yeah, I mean, early on, when we first formed the band, Alan and I, like, as I said, we'd been in our earlier band was Germinal, which was had no vocals and no lyrics. We were very anti-song.
Okay.
And when we formed Cowboy Junkies, we were still sort of anti-song. But as I mentioned, I'd be getting into the blues music, and so our concept was we'd be this band that kind of takes blues music and kind of brings it forward, and we reinterpret it through our, once again, some white suburban kids will reinterpret blues music. And when we got Margot in the band, we thought, well, let's take that, let's even steal their lyrics, and we'll credit them, but we'll reinterpret again, throw out the melodies, throw out the structures, throw out basically the style, and just kind of bring it forward. So we weren't really thinking about songwriting in that sense. We were kind of more of a collective as far as that goes. We kind of jam out ideas, and we get an idea, and that'd become a song, and we'd throw a lyric on top, and a blues lyric on top, and that would be the song. And that's really that first record. And it's sort of we were like that for a little while, and then into that blues music mix came country music, and with that, of course, comes the great songwriters. And I began to, and I'd written songs earlier in my career, again in earlier bands, and I began to got interested again in writing songs, and I sort of went from there. And Margot did a little bit at the beginning, threw a few ideas at me, and then I'd form them. But it wasn't really her thing. She didn't really care about it. I really cared about it, and I really wanted to do it, and nobody else did. So I sort of went on from there.
Well, and you brought up reinterpretation of songs, and obviously you guys have built a career out of,
Sure,
of reinterpreting kind of not even just classics, but just reinterpreting catalogs at times.
Sure.
What do you get out of that reinterpretation when you look at a song, and how do you know that it's right for you, and how do you know what to do with it?
Yeah, it's hard, I mean, the reinterpreting of songs has always been something very important to us. And, we've always been puzzled at the idea that, you don't, why do you do so many covers? Well, my question is, why don't you do more covers? Like, that's what music is, that's, except for, pre Bob Dylan, Beatles, that's what people did, right? You weren't necessarily the songwriter. You were the interpreter of the song that was given to you, or that you found, or that you loved, or whatever. And certainly with country music, that was a big part of it when we were listening to country music. Um, so we never shied away from being interpreters, and also wanted to show, as I going back, we were music fans. Before we were musicians, we were music fans. We grew up in a house with lots of music and listened to music all the time, and we wanted to wear that on our sleeve. Like, we wanted to show people where we were coming from, and what we were, who had influenced us, and also bring that inspiration and those emotions that had been pulled from us by these artists, whoever they be, whether it be Dylan or Neil Young or Lightning Hopkins. And we wanted to bring them forward. And so that was sort of the reasoning behind it. It still is. How we pick a song, there's so many reasons. Sometimes it's really just somebody calls us up and says, we want you to be part of this Rolling Stones tribute, and find a song, or it's a Revolver, 50th anniversary Revolver, and let's find a whatever, and so then sometimes it's we just, like, for example, there were a more recent cover we've done is 5 years, David Boy's 5 years. And again, that was part of it. We put this night together in Toronto, a couple of nights together, and with a few local bands, and one of the themes for one of the night was dead heroes. So you're supposed to take songs of people who had died and do them. So we picked David Boy, and 5 years is just one of those songs for me. Ziggy Stardust, if I had to pick one rock album, that's it. That's my album, right? And that opening track, it just kind of like blew my head as a kid. So I thought, let's take a shot at it. So we began to play it, and it was fun, and it got a good reaction. So there's all sorts of reasons for choosing them.
Well, then I guess my follow-up to that one would be, what is for you the importance of Vic Chestnut? How do you
Yeah.
get to the point where you truly take on an album of someone else's words and music?
Yeah.
Where does that importance of him come from?
So part of that was timing. We were in the middle of, we had just started a new project called the Nomad series, which was a series of 4 records, and the 4 records were going to be kind of focus on different aspects of our band. So there was going to be the songwriter album. There's going to be a live psychedelic, not live, but live off the floor psychedelic album, which kind of reflects some of our live sound. There was going to be a very experimental album, which was based on my travels in China. And then the 4th record was going to be a covers record. We knew that from the start, but we didn't know what the covers record would be. We were thinking of maybe doing other, more Townes songs, or maybe a Neil Young album or whatever. And then Vic died. And Vic had been, we had known Vic. We'd done a couple of tours with him, and had really loved him, loved his work from being a complete unique songwriter, unique performer. And as fans, we just loved his work. Didn't really think it had any connection to us in many ways. But when he dies, like, well, let's look at this. So we began to look at his material, as his songs, and try to think of them in terms of, okay, how can we knew this was going to be difficult for big Vic Chestnut fans, because Vic's voice and the way he does songs are basically a big part of the song. But we thought the other part of the song is obviously the lyrics, and the emotion that he brings to those lyrics. Not that he as a vocalist, but just as a writer brings to them. And we thought we could handle it. So we for that record, we must have recorded like 20 songs, because we weren't really sure. Everybody brought in their favorite songs of his, and then we just sort of started to go through them. And that was why it was a tribute to him. Basically, he as I say, he just died, and we are huge fans, and it was a challenge. It was a big challenge.
Nice.
I love that. I love that he meant that much to you guys. That whole album is. I'm a covers person as well. That's one of my favorite things in the entire world. So special place in my heart.
Yeah.
Along the way, obviously you guys kind of had yourselves as your own built-in mentors, but who were the musicians and songwriters that you kind of looked to as your early mentors?
Well, like early on, I mean, Townes Van Zandt was a big one. Like, Townes was somebody who, when we were touring, early days when we were touring White South Earth Now, and well, definitely White South Earth Now, we had a tape that somebody made for us, um, of a collection of town songs that we, and this person was a friend of mine um, who was a big music fan as well, and he had discovered Towns and brought me this cassette and said, I don't know if you know this guy, but listen to this. And I didn't at that point. I didn't. For whatever reason, my older brother John had not really brought him into their house. That's how I discovered, those the
Right.
70s sort of style of singer songwriters. So this was now the early or mid 80s, and so this friend gave us this tape, and it was, it became known as the Towns tape. And whenever we were doing a late night drive on tour, somebody would say, put in the Towns tape, and we'd listen to that tape, hundreds of times over hundreds of miles. And so he became a pretty big influence as far as, how to approach a song, and the power of a song, the power of an individual, of writing. And then we had the huge, great fortune of, we then Trinity Session came along, got success, and then the next tour after that was for the band, the album called Caution Horses, and we needed an opener, and somebody kind of jokingly said, "Let's call Towns Van Zandt." At that point, Towns has kind of disappeared a little bit. He was at a very low point in his career, so we called Towns Van Zandt, and very, very luckily, his wife had heard of us. So as a story, as we were told later, so he came back and said, or she came back and said, he'll do the tour and he'd love to do it. And, I'm sure she's twisting his arm, as she was. She was saying, let's do this. You got to get out of the house, and, nobody knows who the hell you are right now. So go do this. And she said, but he has to travel. He has to travel in your tour bus because, he doesn't want to, he can't get himself. He doesn't want to bring anybody. He just wants to be by himself. And we said, well, sure, great. So we spent many months on the road with him. And
did you force him to listen to the Towns tape?
Yeah. Well, he was a live Towns tape, like literally after many, many shows, because he had like a 45-minute opening slot. He'd want to play more, and he'd come back like after the show, after we showered and we were ready to drive, he'd sit in the front lounge with his guitar and play songs. And he'd talk about them, and he'd tell where the songs came from. And, it was like master class, right? So that was, I can't think of anybody more important than him as far as songwriting goes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time too, he was also writing, he said, he was, and the fun thing was too, he was very inspired by that tour. He had a lot of fun, and I think he enjoyed us. We were kind of fresh, I guess, and he was able to sort of be a little bit distant, and watch this thing happening to us, which was kind of fun for him. And he started to write again. He said he hadn't been writing for years and years, and so he'd sort of come back into the bus some of those nights, and he'd have like a little bit of he'd say, oh, here, listen to this. This is a new one I'm working on, and some of those songs made it onto his last real record. Right. And one of them was Cowboy Junkies Lament, which he wrote for us during that tour. And he didn't play it for us. He said, I don't want to play this for you until I'm writing a song about you guys, but I don't want to play it for you until it's finished. It's not finished. And unfortunately, he didn't finish it before the end of the tour. But about a month later, he sent me a cassette saying, here's the song. And it's like, okay.
It's got to be a pretty incredible feeling to kind of be the mentor to your mentor for a while.
Inspiration.
Inspiration. How's that?
Inspiration to your mentor.
Yeah.
Well, you said something earlier on about that I really liked, that you guys were anti-song, and the only other time I've really heard that is in interviews with like Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon and
Sure.
The beginnings of Sonic Youth, where they talk about where they pull songs apart. And I was talking to Courtney earlier about the lyrics and how one of the things I've always loved about the lyrics in your songs is that you're not focused on a rhyme scheme. You're not necessarily focused on, you're writing there are stories in these songs.
Right.
And how do you, I guess, with the idea of being anti-song and the idea of kind of, does that kind of account for the lyrics kind of being what they are and not forming them into something maybe more of I guess, into a formula.
Yeah, I guess so. Part of it too was where it was certainly in the early days, and even now to a certain extent, is my lack of schooling. Right, like I don't have any real training in guitar and music in anything really, and that's part of the band's secret too. When we started, we just when Al and I started before Cowboy Junkies, we just picked up. It was late '70s, right? That's what you did. You picked up an instrument and you played. That was the whole idea of the punk movement, right? Just you don't have to be Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. You be you and you do your thing. So that we started that we maintained that attitude, and as we began to roll, I began to write songs. I think I just maintained that, right? Like I was inspired certainly by some sort of country forms, and I knew forms, but I didn't, I didn't. If you were to ask me what a middle eight was, I don't know. It's something the Beatles do. Like I don't know. So I was kind of just writing. I wanted to write stories, and I wanted to make sure that. I think almost to a fault in the early days, I wanted to make sure the story was told rather than the song was told. I wanted the story to be told, right? So I just figured out how to make that story told. Like those early songs, like especially around Black Eyed Man, which is our fourth record. Jeff Bird, who's been with us as a musician forever, says that's your chordy period, right? So I just however many chords I had to use, I just used to tell the story, right? And I just did it because I didn't know any better, or that's what I needed to do. So I think that's part of it. You're right. Like I didn't come at this from a song, like from a craftsman's point of view. Like I think. Like our song, like a lot of our songs aren't necessarily, they're not classic. You're right. They're not put together the way a craftsman would put them together. Just they're put together how I want to tell the story. So you're right.
I love that.
Well, and I love that too as a writer, and looking at it from the lens of a teacher, and how I might use this in a classroom or something. It was so much fun because I can see the story in all of your songs.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And it's so brilliant. And I'm not trained in any sort of musical anything. I just picked up a guitar and I can play like 4 chords.
Yeah.
So I actually appreciate it. In a couple of your songs, I was like, I am amazed at how much musically is actually going on behind this, because I would have such a hard time. I can pick a couple chords as I'm trying to stumble through my lyrics. So putting all of that together, it's magical. And the amount of story that you have in your songs, they're so rich and alive. And they carry so well through time. And I think that's kind of the test of a story is, will it translate through multiple generations and multiple time? And it does. We spent the whole morning just listening to your catalog, and it was brilliant. So I think whether you're formally trained or not, you've definitely done this craft for long enough that life has formally trained you and done a brilliant job. So,
well, and so what do you listen to? Like, what are now, like, I mean, and even not a now question.
Oh, yes.
Like,
I want to know what's on your
but
playlist.
like, what are your car songs now?
Well, I mean, literally car songs. I rarely listen to music in the car.
What are you listening to in the car? Are you a podcast? Are you listening to?
Yeah, I listen to podcasts or an audiobook or whatever, if I'm traveling, that to me, I need a narrative to get me to the next mile. So, my wife's a big car listener as far as music goes. And my kids are too. My kids are huge music fans. But what I listen to, like, if I want to sit down and listen to music, like I've never used music as a background noise. I don't really enjoy it. Like, so if I'm going to listen to music, I'm going to listen to music. I'm actually going to sit down and that's why I think, when people ask, we have the vinyl versus streaming versus CD debate. I just like vinyl because it forces you to be there. It forces you to get up. It forces you to pay attention, right? Forces you to make a decision. And so if I'm going to listen to music these days, it's usually jazz, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
It's usually like my I have a very big jazz collection, and my go-to again is nostalgia. It's like sort of that late 50s, early 60s jazz, Coltrane, Davis, all that era. and that's what I really love. I think it's because I don't really have a musical connection to it. Like I don't understand. You know, I don't understand it. I can't play it. I can't listen to it and go, oh, he's doing a major. Oh, there's, you know, it's like I don't know what they're doing, but it moves me, right? Like it just gets
Yeah.
into. Or if I listen to a song, and there's lots of great songwriters, like you know, there's tons of great songwriters around, and I do occasionally listen to them, but you know, if I listen to a song or a contemporary recording, I'm hearing the recording, I'm hearing how they did it, I'm hearing this.
So the producer side of you takes over.
Producer side of it, you know, and even the songwriter side of it, I go, oh, that's an interesting metaphor. That's cool. Okay, no, and there's no rhyme there. Interesting. You know, it's like, you know, I find it very hard to fall into it.
Is there a least annoying band that your kids have shown you?
We have a 15-year-old.
Yeah, our kid's 15, so there's a lot of least annoying bands.
Well, my you know, my son has got great taste. He's I mean he's kind of like me. He's absorbed everything from early rock to now, and so he's very into like he introduced me to actually again he introduced me to Kamasi Washington, who is probably my favorite musician right now. Like,
yeah.
So you know, so he's not just bringing me rock music, but he's bringing me stuff that I like.
Yeah.
He introduced me. You know, not that there was a need to be introduced to them at Christmas time, but a year before that, he introduced me to Geese. You know, so he's bringing people. You know, he's very on the cutting edge of stuff. So I'm hearing stuff that I would either have to, you know, go who to the biggest band in the world, or you know, or just stumble on. So you know, and he's also do a lot of kind of the more, again, country people who, you know, kind of the more there's this raw aesthetic of country music happening again, which is, you know, which when I hear that stuff, I go, well, that's great, but you know, I'll listen to my Loretta Lynn album, you know. But there's a ton of it, and it's really great that they're, you know, it's very raw and it's very real, and I understand why they are loving it. So there's a lot coming out.
I love that. Well, with every one of our guests that come on, I choose one of your songs and then see if I can write a lesson that someone could use in a classroom with it.
Okay.
And it's one of the joys for me is I used to be an administrator and a teacher. And since my accident, I haven't been able to do that. And so this is a great way for me to kind of link back into that world.
Excellent.
And I chose Blue Moon Revisited, song for Elvis, which I love. And I titled this lesson A Hint of Blue. And the purpose of this lesson would be to identify illusion and then use illusion in their own writing. And so I'd start by playing the song, having students have a copy of the song, and then ask them for the purpose while they're listening to identify any illusions that they can see, and then mark them in their text, and then share in their small groups what they found, what they think it relates to, and then share it out in their large group. And then ask them, what are the key components that the author used to create this illusion, so that we can understand it, and kind of bring that into a larger conversation of what do we need in order to understand illusions, and what do illusions do for us? Why do we use them? Why are they important? And then give them some real world examples. Play this original song for them. There's a clip in Babe where the mice sing Blue Moon.
How do they sing that, Courtney?
Saw you standing alone without something like that. It's very small. They're very small mice. But then also get them to start seeing some examples of illusion in pop culture and commercials in other areas of their life. It's kind of everywhere, but I don't think we always catch it. And sometimes that's because of context, if we don't have that context. So then their task. It's time to allude to it. So choose a subject: hope, friendship, betrayal. You get it. Then choose a reference that relates to their subject, and then write a poem that alludes to the reference by showing instead of directly telling us, remembering that allusions are Easter eggs. Don't hit us in the head with a frying pan. And then, as always, illustrations are welcome. And so I did one as well. And we'll send this to you because it'll be hard to see.
I have to see it. Oh, cool. Okay. Excellent.
So mine's called Zeus Was a No-Show. My mother has a hope chest. I know the smell, wood and childhood. Hours spent examining faces for a trace of myself. Cotton quilts pressed against my cheek, waiting for the day my chest would begin to fill with the delicate lace that holds a family together. But Zeus wasn't a guest at my wedding. Maybe his invite was lost in the mail. So I cling to what I saw in that wooden box all those years ago, because I've been taught when all else leaves, hope remains. And so that one's my poem.
Very nice.
Thank you. So,
One of the fun things is that since Courtney is no longer in the classroom, I still am. So I get to bring some of these into my students' worlds, which is really cool. One of the main reasons we started Cassingles was because we wanted that conversation with students of how do we open up the world to them. They have all of these things that they're supposed to learn, but sometimes standing in front of them and talking or giving them essays doesn't always capture that.
so how do we link some other ways? And music is just such a brilliant way to do that. And it's so rich with story. And your music is definitely so rich with story.
Excellent.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for spending this time with us today on Cassingles. We really appreciate you being on here with us, and for the 40 plus years of incredible music now that we look forward to continuing to listen to for years to come.
All right.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening and following along. We'll be back soon with more stories and songs. That's Cassingles. That's Cassingles. Yeah, that's Cassingles.